Have you ever struggled with the decision of whether your elderly parents should live with you? In this video, we explore the complex dynamics and real-life stories that highlight why cohabiting might not always lead to happiness for everyone involved. From heartfelt accounts of family conflicts to expert insights on maintaining harmony, you'll gain a deeper understanding of the challenges and benefits of multi-generational living. Stay with us until the end to uncover essential tips and strategies that can help you navigate these sensitive family relationships and create a peaceful living environment for all generations. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me. And if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. When we think back to the 1950s or 60s, life was different. In those times, it wasn't unusual to see elderly parents moving in with their children due to the widespread housing shortage. Back then, family was everything. Parents raised their children with the expectation that, when the time came, the roles would reverse. Children would care for their aging parents, and families would live together in harmony under one roof. The idea of elderly parents living with their children was seen as a sign of family unity and deep-rooted love, and in many cases, it truly worked. There seemed to be a certain peace in the multi-generational household. The respect between family members, the traditions passed down, and the emotional closeness created an environment where everyone understood their role, and happiness was found in taking care of one another. But somewhere along the way, as society progressed, something changed. The hustle and bustle of modern life, and the pressures of balancing careers, relationships, and personal ambitions began to take a toll on these once harmonious living arrangements. No longer was it simple or easy for multiple generations to live under the same roof. The relationships between parents and children, once seamless, began to fray. The inevitable conflicts that arise when people of different ages and stages in life live together start to surface. Disagreements between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, or step-parents and children, became more frequent. What once were small, manageable differences began to evolve into daily frustrations. Little misunderstandings quickly spiraled into heated arguments, and sadly, in some cases, even escalated to physical altercations. Can you imagine the pain of seeing a family, the people who are supposed to love you the most, torn apart in such a devastating way? Now, here we are, living in a time when housing is no longer the issue it once was. Many of us live in much larger homes than our parents or grandparents ever did. We have more space and better living conditions. And yet, despite this, the relationships between elderly parents and their adult children are often more strained than ever. Why is that? How can it be that, with all the progress we've made, so many families struggle when living together? The truth is, it's not about the space or the size of the house. It's about the delicate balance of independence and respect. Parents, no matter how much they love their children, don't want to interfere in their lives. They want to enjoy their golden years, free from the stress of managing a household. At the same time, children, even though they deeply love their parents, want to live their own lives. They want the freedom to make decisions with their partners, to raise their children, and to establish their routines without the pressure of having to care for someone else. It's a natural desire, but one that can create tension when parents and children are forced to live under the same roof. And when that tension builds, it can lead to feelings of resentment, frustration, and emotional distance, a far cry from the harmonious family life we all long for. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. One story that brings all of this to light is that of Sister Wong, a woman whose experience broke my heart and left me reflecting on the complexities of family relationships. Sister Wong, now 58, suffered a stroke last year and was abandoned in her hometown by her son and daughter-in-law. Can you imagine? After everything she had done for her son, raising him, loving him, giving him everything she had, he turned his back on her when she needed him the most. Even more shockingly, while Sister Wong was left behind to fend for herself, her son and daughter-in-law still asked her husband to come to the city to take care of their child. How could they be so selfish, so blind to the needs of their mother? The pain and sadness that Sister Wong must have felt are unimaginable. What's worse is that this heartbreaking situation didn't come out of nowhere. Sister Wong and her husband, Brotherly, have only one son, a son who was treated like a precious gem from the day he was born. In the Lee family, having a male heir was seen as the ultimate blessing. And so, Sister Wong and her husband did everything they could to ensure that their son wanted for nothing. They spoiled him, indulged him, and made sure that he knew just how valuable he was to them. From the time he was a child, their son was coddled, shielded from hardship, and given the impression that the world revolved around him. Sister Wong's careful and loving guidance helped shape him into the man he is today, but in doing so, she may have unknowingly created a man who took his parents' love for granted. When the time came for their son to marry, he wed a woman from a neighboring village through an introduction. After the marriage, however, the dynamic shifted. Sister Wong's son became what many refer to as a hand-picked husband, someone who follows his wife's lead without question. Whatever she says, he obeys, and in their household, her word is law. While today's society often views this kind of deference as a key to family harmony, The reality is much more complicated. In Sister Wong's case, her son's unquestioning obedience to his wife came at the cost of his relationship with his parents. He became distant and emotionally unavailable, and ultimately left his mother behind when she needed him the most. Sister Wong's story is a powerful reminder of how delicate family relationships can be. It's a painful example of how the love and care that parents give to their children can sometimes lead to unintended consequences. As parents, we pour our hearts and souls into raising our children, hoping that they will grow into kind, responsible adults. But when we overindulge them, when we shelter them from the realities of life, we run the risk of raising children who, when the time comes, are unable or unwilling to give back. It's hard to face, but sometimes the best way to preserve the love and respect between parents and children is to live separately. It allows each generation the space they need to live their lives without the added pressure of day-to-day cohabitation. It preserves the emotional bonds without the strain of constant interaction, and it ensures that both parents and children can maintain their independence, dignity, and peace of mind. As I reflect on Sister Wong's story, I can't help but feel a deep sense of sorrow for her and others like her parents who have given everything to their children, only to find themselves abandoned or taken for granted. It makes me think about the delicate balance we must strike in our family relationships and the importance of creating boundaries that allow for love to flourish without being suffocated by proximity. The demands placed on Sister Wong and her husband by their son and daughter-in-law were nothing short of heartbreaking. Shortly after their son's marriage, the cracks in their family dynamic began to show, and it all started with the daughter-in-law's complaints about their home. Despite living in a large 2-story house, over 200 square meters in size, more than enough space to comfortably house Sister Wong, her husband, and their son and daughter-in-law, the daughter-in-law began to grumble that the house was too small. She used this as an excuse to demand that the family be split, wanting Sister Wong and her husband to move out as quickly as possible. The complaints didn't stop there. She also claimed that the house was too messy, further insisting that the elderly couple leave. For Sister Wong, who had dedicated her life to her family, this demand was a devastating blow. She had spent years caring for her son, nurturing him and providing him with everything he needed. To be asked to leave the very home she had helped build felt like a betrayal. And yet, despite the pain, Sister Wong knew this day would come. She had mentally prepared herself for it. But what she didn't expect was how quickly the son and daughter-in-law would demand their departure. Without much choice, she and her husband packed their things and moved out, first going to live with her mother-in-law while they waited for their new home in the countryside to be completed. Just as Sister Wong and her husband were beginning to settle into their new home, a modest place they hoped would bring them some much-needed peace, the trouble with their daughter-in-law began again. This time, the demands became even more unreasonable. The son and daughter-in-law soon welcomed a child into the world, and as expected, the daughter-in-law had yet another list of demands. To ensure their child would receive the best education, the daughter-in-law insisted that Sister Wong and her husband buy an apartment in the city. The audacity of this request was shocking. Purchasing an apartment in the city was no small task. It would cost hundreds of thousands of yuan, draining Sister Wong and her husband of their life savings. But the demands didn't stop there. When Sister Wong and her husband hesitated, trying to explain how much of a financial burden this would be, the son and daughter-in-law responded with threats, even going so far as to threaten divorce. Sister Wong, helpless and heartbroken, once again found herself with no real choice. To avoid seeing her son's marriage fall apart, she and her husband borrowed money from friends, neighbors, and anyone who would lend it, scraping together enough to buy the city apartment. It was an enormous sacrifice, but for Sister Wong, her love for her son outweighed everything else. Once the apartment was purchased, the son and his family moved in, and Sister Wong and her husband returned to their countryside home, exhausted and financially drained, but hoping that they might finally find some peace. However, just when it seemed like things might settle down, another demand was thrown their way, one that would once again disrupt their lives. The daughter-in-law, who had previously been so adamant about splitting the family and complaining about how messy the house was, now insisted that Sister Wong move to the city to help care for the grandchild. This new demand left Sister Wong torn and conflicted. On one hand, she cherished her grandson and wanted to be involved in his life. But on the other hand, she had only just begun to enjoy the peace that came with living in her own home, free from the constant stress of living under her daughter-in-law's roof. Reluctantly, and with a heavy heart, Sister Wong and her husband packed their bags once again and took the long bus ride from their rural home to their son's city apartment. They did this not because they wanted to, but because they didn't want to make things difficult for their son. Despite the turmoil they had already been through, Sister Wong still held on to the hope that she could help her family and that her sacrifices would bring everyone closer together. In the first few days, Sister Wong did her best to adjust. She spent her time cooking meals, cleaning the house, and taking care of her grandson. For a brief moment, it seemed like things might work out. But as always, the peace didn't last. Slowly but surely, the daughter-in-law's criticisms began again. She started to nitpick everything Sister Wong did, complaining about the cleaning not being done properly or the meals not being to her liking. The once small and insignificant remarks soon turned into daily arguments, with the daughter-in-law finding fault in everything Sister Wong did. The criticism was relentless, And no matter how hard Sister Wong tried, it was never enough. Her efforts to help were met with disdain, and her presence in her son's home seemed to only create more tension. For Sister Wong, this constant barrage of complaints was soul-crushing. She had given everything: her time, her energy, her life savings to support her son and his family. And yet, despite all of her sacrifices, she was treated like an inconvenience, a burden to be tolerated rather than a mother to be loved and respected. The emotional toll of this situation was immense. Each complaint from her daughter-in-law felt like a dagger to her heart, a painful reminder that no matter what she did, she would never be appreciated. Sister Wong's story is one of countless others where parents, in their later years, find themselves being taken advantage of by the very children to whom they devoted their lives. It's a heartbreaking reminder of how the dynamics of family relationships can shift, leaving elderly parents feeling abandoned, unappreciated, and disrespected. Despite everything Sister Wong had done for her son, her love and sacrifices were met with demands, criticism, and ultimately heartbreak. Sister Wong's story takes a devastating turn as her relationship with her son deteriorates further, all because of her daughter-in-law's relentless troublemaking. Although her son, deep down, recognized that his wife was intentionally causing problems, he never dared to stand up to her. Instead, he took the easier path and started criticizing his parents, feeling torn between his loyalty to his wife and his guilt towards his mother and father. It's heartbreaking to imagine the weight of this betrayal. Sister Wong, who had sacrificed so much for her son, was now receiving only coldness and criticism in return. She confided in her husband in secret, sharing her sorrows and frustrations. But ultimately, they felt powerless. They had found themselves up against an insurmountable force, this formidable daughter-in-law, whose words seemed to control everything in their son's life. But the breaking point, the moment that shattered Sister Wong's already fragile spirit, came one day when she discovered that the local specialty she had lovingly brought from her rural home had been given away by her daughter-in-law with Finchalan. For Sister Wong, those items represented more than just food. They were a connection to her roots, a piece of her identity, and a symbol of her love for her family. When she asked about it, hoping for a simple explanation, what she received instead was anger and hostility. The daughter-in-law flew into a rage, and in an unspeakable act of cruelty, she physically attacked Sister Wong, hitting her during their argument. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. Can you imagine the pain and humiliation of that moment? The daughter-in-law's blatant disrespect, the violence, the utter disregard for all that Sister Wong had done, it was unbearable. In a state of hurt and disbelief, Sister Wong turned to her son, desperately seeking justice. After all, surely her son, the boy she had raised with so much love and care, would defend her, would stand up for what was right. But to her immense disappointment, her son, still too afraid of his wife's wrath, simply told his mother to endure it. As if all the sacrifices, all the grievances, all the pain she had already endured weren't enough. At that moment, something broke inside Sister Wong. The woman who had given everything for her son could no longer take the abuse. She packed her things and returned to her rural home, leaving behind the city life that had brought her nothing but hard action. But even as she sought refuge in her peaceful countryside, the nightmare wasn't over. The daughter-in-law, once again using her favorite weapon, threats of divorce, forced Sister Wong to return to the city. The ultimatum was clear. If Sister Wong didn't come back to care for her grandchild, her son's marriage would fall apart. Feeling trapped, Sister Wong, despite all the emotional wounds she carried, returned. Over the following years, she endured countless grievances, most of them at the hands of her daughter-in-law. The criticisms, the belittling remarks, the constant sense of not being wanted, it all weighed heavily on her. It's hard to imagine how someone could endure so much, but Sister Wong did, all for the sake of her son's happiness. As the years passed, Sister Wong's health began to decline. The stress, the emotional torment, and the physical strain of caring for her grandchild eventually took their toll. She was diagnosed with a stroke, and finally she returned to her rural home for good. Living apart from her son and daughter-in-law brought her a sense of mental relief that she hadn't felt in years. At last she was free from the daily torment, free from the constant criticism, free from the pain of being mistreated by the very people she had sacrificed so much for. Her husband became her primary caregiver, tending to her needs as she recovered. But the emotional scars remained, a painful reminder of all that she had endured. As for her son, he seemed content to leave things as they were. For him, the absence of conflict was enough. He considered it a blessing that his mother was no longer causing trouble. It's deeply saddening to think that his relationship with his mother had deteriorated to the point where simply not having arguments was seen as a positive outcome. If only his wife had treated Sister Wong and her husband with the same love and respect that she showed her parents, perhaps things could have been different. Perhaps there could have been more harmony, more understanding, more love in their household. But these are just hypotheticals, and as much as we wish we could rewrite the past, the reality is that things turned out the way they did. Maybe, in some cruel twist of fate, this was Sister Wong's destiny. Her story serves as a powerful reminder of why elderly parents should think carefully before deciding to live with their children. While the idea of living together may seem like a beautiful expression of familial love, the reality can be far more complicated. In Sister Wong's case, living with her son and daughter-in-law led to nothing but pain, stress, and heartache. It's a cautionary tale for all of us, showing how important it is to protect our own mental and emotional well-being, even when it means making difficult decisions about family. Living apart may not be the ideal solution for everyone, but for some, it's the only way to preserve peace, dignity, and the precious bonds that hold families together. The reasons for separation. The reasons for elderly parents and their children living separately go far beyond mere logistics. They strike at the heart of deep-rooted emotional and cultural differences that come to light as generations collide. One of the most significant reasons is that the elderly, through no fault of their own, often find themselves out of touch with the rapidly evolving world around them. Think for a moment about how much your eating habits have changed from your youth to now. Even something as basic as food, which should remain constant, transforms over time. The dishes you once enjoyed may not even be recognizable to the younger generation. Now, extend that comparison to every other aspect of life: clothing styles, methods of transportation, and modes of communication. The pace of change can be dizzying. While younger people naturally adapt to these changes, embracing technology, new customs, and societal shifts, the elderly often struggle to keep up. They find comfort in the familiar, in routines they've spent a lifetime cultivating. And this dissonance can cause tension when forced to live in a household where everything feels foreign and fast-paced. Then there is the timeless battle between stubborn mothers-in-law and their daughters-in-law, a source of tension that has plagued families for generations. There's an old saying, "You have a reason, I have a reason." Even the most just and fair official could never resolve family disputes that stem from these clashes. The delicate and often tense relationship between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law is only heightened when they share the same roof. It's almost inevitable. The proximity, the sharing of space, meals, and resources, it's a recipe for friction. Whether it's a kind mother-in-law and a difficult daughter-in-law, or a stubborn in-law and a gentle daughter-in-law, conflicts will arise. The very nature of these relationships is fraught with complexities, and living together only amplifies these tensions. The result: frustration, misunderstandings, and an environment that feels far from harmonious. One story that sheds light on the emotional toll this can take is the story of Grandpa F, a 75-year-old man who once believed that having many children would guarantee a peaceful and supported old age. In his younger days, Grandpa F was the envy of his village. With 3 sons and a daughter, he was highly respected, and no one dared to look down on him. Having sons in particular was seen as a blessing, a sign that he would never have to worry about old age. Sons, after all, were expected to care for their parents in their later years. Grandpa F, like so many of his generation, believed that by working hard and giving his children the best of everything, they would naturally repay him by taking care of him when he could no longer work. As his sons grew up, got married, and started their own families, Grandpa F and his wife continued to give everything they had to support them. They spent all their savings, and even went into debt to help their sons get established. Grandpa F worked tirelessly on construction sites, long after he should have retired, just to pay off the debt they had accumulated. He never complained, because he believed it was his duty to help his sons, and he trusted that they would take care of him in return. When his daughter got married, however, things took a different turn. Unlike his sons, Grandpa F didn't provide financial support for her marriage. Instead, he demanded a hefty bride price of 500,000 yuan from her future husband. To Grandpa F, this wasn't favoritism, it was simply the way things were. Daughters were expected to leave their families and join their husbands' households, so asking for a large bride price was seen as normal. He believed that since he had raised his daughter and now had to give her away, taking money in return was fair. However, this decision created a rift between Grandpa F and his son-in-law. The son-in-law felt resentful about the large bride price, and as a result, he treated Grandpa F with coldness and disdain, never visiting or offering support. As Grandpa F entered old age, his health began to fail. His wife passed away, leaving him alone, and the years of hard labor took a toll on his body. No longer able to work, he was forced to retire and rely on his children for care. Initially, his 3 sons agreed to take turns caring for him, each taking responsibility for him 1 month at a time. At first, Grandpa F was content with this arrangement, believing that his sons were fulfilling their duty. But as time passed, he began to notice a troubling pattern. His daughters-in-law, particularly, disliked having him in their homes. They made him feel unwelcome, treating him as an inconvenience. Grandpa F, who had once been a respected figure in his village, now felt like a burden in his own children's homes. Unable to bear the mistreatment, Grandpa F eventually stopped going to his sons' houses altogether. He didn't want to feel like a nuisance, didn't want to be on the receiving end of his daughter-in-law's coldness. Desperate for some sense of peace, he turned to his daughter. Although his daughter was incredibly filial and loving, her husband still harboring resentment over the bride price treated Grandpa F poorly. Despite his daughter's best efforts to care for him, the tension between her husband and father made it impossible for Grandpa F to feel at home. In the end, Grandpa F made the difficult decision to return to his rural home, alone. Though his living conditions were far from ideal, he found solace in his independence. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of mental peace. He no longer had to endure the cold stares, the veiled insults, or the feeling of being unwanted. While his sons and daughter had promised to care for him, he realized that he was better off relying on his abilities. Though his body was frail, his mind was at ease. Living alone, he no longer expected anything from his children, and in that newfound solitude he found a sense of freedom. Grandpa F's story is a sobering reminder of the emotional complexities that can arise when elderly parents live with their children. His belief that having many children would guarantee a peaceful and supported old age proved to be a painful illusion. The reality was far more complicated, filled with disappointments, mistreatment, and a harsh realization that family dynamics can shift in unexpected and hurtful ways. His decision to live separately, though difficult, ultimately brought him the peace he had longed for. This is why the separation of elderly parents and their children is not only necessary at times, but can be a path to preserving dignity, respect, and mental well-being. Living apart allows both generations the freedom to live their lives without the constant friction that can arise from clashing values, habits, and expectations. While it may seem counterintuitive, sometimes the best way to maintain a loving relationship is to create a healthy distance. 3 reasons why elderly parents should not live with their children. 1. Don't always satisfy your children. As parents, it's natural to want to give our children everything they desire, to make them happy and see smiles on their faces. However, there's a fine line between love and overindulgence. And always satisfying a child's wants can be detrimental in the long run. Some parents, out of their deep affection or sense of obligation, instinctively provide whatever their children ask for. They rush to fulfill their children's desires, thinking it will bring happiness and gratitude. But here lies the hard truth. Constantly giving in to their demands can lead to a lack of appreciation and an inability to understand the value of hard work. Instead of immediately satisfying every whim, it is far more beneficial to teach children the importance of earning what they want through their efforts. When children are made to understand that their desires must be achieved through patience, perseverance, and hard work, they develop a much deeper sense of gratitude and appreciation. They come to realize that not everything in life can be handed to them instantly, and this instills respect for both the things they attain and the people who help them along the way, especially their parents. By denying instant gratification, we are not being unkind. We are helping our children cultivate an essential life skill: the ability to wait, work, and strive for their goals. When children learn that some things take time and effort to achieve, they begin to cherish those things more. They also develop a deeper understanding of their parents' sacrifices, and they are less likely to take the comforts they've been given for granted. Filial piety, the respect and care for one's parents, is not something that comes naturally. It is nurtured through the lessons we teach our children. A child who is constantly given everything they ask for may grow up feeling entitled, believing that life's rewards are guaranteed simply by asking. This sense of entitlement can slowly erode any sense of gratitude, and over time, this ungratefulness can harden into indifference. As parents, it's heartbreaking to think that all of our efforts, sacrifices, and love could one day be met with ingratitude. And yet, this is the risk we take if we fail to instill in our children the value of patience, effort, and respect. By allowing children to struggle a little, and by making them wait for the things they want, we are preparing them to appreciate not just material possessions, but also the hard work behind them. More importantly, we are ensuring that when we need them later in life, they will be there not out of obligation, but out of a deep sense of love and responsibility. In the end, raising a filial child is one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves as parents. It's an investment in a future where our children not only understand the sacrifices we've made, but are willing to reciprocate them with care and respect when they take. But this cannot be achieved through spoiling or indulgence. True filial piety is born from understanding, gratitude, and the realization that nothing in life comes easy, especially the love and support of a parent. 2. Treat all children fairly. One of the most important lessons for parents is learning how to treat all their children fairly, no matter the circumstances. When children are young, it's crucial to ensure that they feel equally valued and loved, as even small differences in treatment can have long-lasting emotional effects. As parents, we sometimes unknowingly show favoritism, perhaps because one child is more obedient or excels in a particular area. However, playing favorites, whether intentional or not, can lead to resentment, rivalry, and a sense of inferiority that lasts well into adulthood. It's essential to recognize that each child is unique with their strengths, challenges, and personality traits. Treating them fairly doesn't mean treating them the same way, but rather meeting their individual needs with the same level of attention, love, and care. Every child wants to feel special, but they also need to know that their siblings are equally important in your eyes. This balance of fairness is what fosters strong sibling relationships and builds an emotionally healthy family. When raising children, fairness should go hand in hand with teaching them the values of gratitude, kindness, and filial piety. It's not enough to shower them with love and gifts. Parents must also instill a sense of responsibility and appreciation. Children need to understand that life's blessings are not given, but earned, and that they owe their parents a debt of gratitude for the sacrifices made on their behalf. This sense of obligation to repay kindness, not just through material means but through love, respect, and care, is essential for maintaining a harmonious family dynamic. Spoiling children with everything they want might feel like an expression of love, but it often backfires in the long run. Children who are given everything without being taught to appreciate or share often grow up feeling entitled. Worse, they may not learn the importance of being there for their parents in their later years. Parents must strike a balance between nurturing their children's needs and teaching them the value of giving back, so that when the time comes, they will know how to repay the kindness they've received. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Ultimately, treating children fairly and raising them with the values of gratitude and filial piety not only benefits the children but also ensures a smoother, happier future for parents. Children who are raised with fairness, gratitude, and a sense of responsibility will be more likely to care for their parents in old age, understanding that love and kindness are mutual and lifelong. When parents make the effort to treat all their children fairly and teach them to be grateful, they are paving the way for a more peaceful and fulfilling old age, a time when their children will honor and care for them, just as they were cared for when they were young. 3. Financial transparency and savings distribution. Time is indeed merciless, and its harshness becomes starkly evident as we age. With the passing years, our energy diminishes, and we become more susceptible to making mistakes or misjudgments. One of the most pressing concerns for many elderly individuals is whether to trust their children with the knowledge of their financial situation. This topic has sparked considerable debate, resulting in 2 opposing views. On one side are those who argue that parents should be transparent about their savings, believing that elderly individuals, prone to forgetfulness and vulnerability, should not hold on to large sums of money. On the other side, critics of this approach warn that revealing financial details may lead to constant requests for money from children. Each perspective holds a kernel of truth, reflecting the complex dynamics of family relationships. Among the many opinions shared on this topic, the story of Aunt Jan, a 70-year-old woman, left a profound impact on me. Aunt Jan's situation is both sobering and realistic, shining a light on the consequences of financial transparency or the lack thereof. With 1 son and 1 daughter, Aunt Jan has navigated the challenges of aging with grace. Despite the loneliness that often accompanies life after losing her husband a few years ago, she resides in her hometown, living off her pension and managing to provide for herself, all while ensuring that her children lead good lives. In her efforts to support her children, Aunt Jan made significant financial decisions. She generously provided her daughter with over 100,000 yuan as a dowry and used her savings to help her son with a down payment on a house in the city. To her, it was never about favoring one child over the other. It was about ensuring both were supported as they built their own lives. In her selflessness, however, Aunt Jan did not keep any savings for herself. She believed that her children would thrive, perhaps naively assuming that her sacrifices would be recognized and appreciated. But one day, Aunt Jan found herself facing an unexpected health crisis. What had once been her agile legs suddenly felt stiff and unresponsive, prompting her to seek medical attention. The doctor suspected a blood clot and recommended further examinations at a larger hospital. Filled with anxiety, Aunt Jan reached out to her son in the city, hoping he would accompany her during this challenging time. To her dismay, he responded that he was on a business trip, too busy to help her. Even more troubling was his insistence that he had no money for medical expenses. Feeling abandoned, Aunt Jan turned to her daughter, who lived far away. She expected compassion and support, but instead she was met with an equally disheartening response. Her daughter, overwhelmed with her responsibilities, stated that she couldn't leave her children and transferred a mere 1,000 yuan to Aunt Street, urging her to go to the hospital alone. When Aunt Jan expressed concern that the amount wouldn't cover her medical costs, her daughter coldly replied, "Ask your son for money. Didn't you give all your money to him?" before abruptly hanging up. This moment must have been a crushing blow for Aunt Jan, revealing the harsh reality of her situation. After selflessly investing her life savings in her children's futures, she found herself alone and unsupported in her time of need. Her story is a stark reminder of the potential pitfalls that come with financial transparency or the lack of it. It illustrates the risks of self-sacrifice without establishing boundaries or expectations. Ultimately, Aunt Jan's experience teaches us a crucial lesson. While transparency can foster trust, it's vital to ensure that our financial decisions do not leave us vulnerable. Balancing generosity with self-care is essential, especially as we age. By maintaining some degree of financial independence, we can protect ourselves from the uncertainties of family dynamics and ensure that our later years are filled with dignity and security. Feeling utterly heartbroken, Aunt Jan found herself reflecting on her sacrifices for her children. She had generously given her son money for a house down payment, even helping with his mortgage payments on occasion, only to see him turn into someone who spent every penny he earned without saving for the future. There was never a word of gratitude or acknowledgement for her unwavering support. Similarly, she had bought a car for her daughter as a dowry, but her daughter viewed this through a lens of resentment, accusing Aunt Jan of favoritism and claiming that she had favored her brother. Despite Aunt Jan's selflessness in giving everything she had to her children, she was met with ingratitude and indifference. She hadn't kept any savings for herself, believing that her investment in her children's futures would yield a loving return in her old age. Yet, as time passed, it became painfully clear that her children were only concerned with their interests. The realization struck her hard, money serves as a profound test of any relationship. It can lay bare the truth of familial bonds, revealing the underlying dynamics that may not be apparent when times are good. When faced with financial matters, sometimes family ties seem to dissolve into worthlessness. The question then arises, should we give all our savings to our children? Some argue that we should, view our children as our closest family, believing that they will be our support as we age. Others warn against giving too early, fearing that once we relinquish control of our finances, we become passive participants in our own lives. Regardless of the stance one takes, both perspectives highlight essential truths about family dynamics and expectations. In our group chat, Xiao Sheng shared a poignant story that echoed Anshan's experience. He recounted the life of his neighbor, Mrs. Li, who lost her husband early and was left to raise her son and daughter alone. Both children eventually found work in the city, and while they visited occasionally, there were long stretches where they wouldn't show up for months. Last year, Mrs. Li began suffering from severe knee pain. When she consulted the village doctor, she learned that she needed surgery to address a knee injury and arthritis. Desperate for help, Mrs. Li called her son, only to be met with disappointment. He was away on a business trip and told her to reach out to her daughter. When her daughter finally took her to the hospital, she scolded her mother, saying, "You shouldn't have given all your money to my brother." It was a painful reminder of how Mrs. Li's past decisions had come back to haunt her. In her younger days, Mrs. Li had run a successful business and had saved a considerable amount of money. She should have been able to enjoy her retirement comfortably, but in her desire to support her children, she had given most of her savings to her son for a house and a car. Even her retirement funds had been passed on to her daughter-in-law in the hopes of winning favor. Yet, gratitude was absent from her son and daughter-in-law. Her son dared to claim, "Didn't you earn all that money from me during your surgery?" Mrs. Li's daughter was the only one who stayed by her side, but it was her daughter who bore the brunt of the financial burden of the surgery, as her brother and sister-in-law continued to make excuses, often citing their busyness as a reason for not visiting. This situation highlights the stark reality: the relationships we cherish can be fragile, especially when put to the test by money. People often say that hearts can't withstand the test of money, and in many cases family ties can falter as well. You may give everything to certain individuals only to find yourself in a passive and regrettable situation, with no support when you need it most. While Mrs. Li's experience may be an exception, it serves as a sobering reminder that financial security provides a sense of confidence and independence. For elderly individuals, having savings isn't just about affording comfort. It represents a form of support that allows them to face life's challenges with dignity. When they have enough saved, they can navigate their golden years with more confidence, free from the burden of relying entirely on their children. This sense of financial independence becomes crucial as they seek to maintain their well-being and peace of mind. How does the distribution of savings affect the elderly? 1. Impact on family relationships. Having an elderly person in the home can be likened to possessing a priceless treasure. They bring a wealth of wisdom, history, and love that can enrich the family dynamic. An elderly family member often serves as a source of harmony, grounding the household in shared experiences and traditions. Their presence can foster a sense of belonging and stability, creating an atmosphere filled with warmth and affection. However, as modern young people increasingly pursue freedom and individual lifestyles, differences in opinions and values between generations become more pronounced. This generational gap can lead to misunderstandings, frustration, and tension within the family. When elderly individuals reach retirement age, the management of savings and assets becomes a critical topic. Ideally, a thoughtful and fair distribution of resources can lead to satisfaction for everyone involved. It allows the elderly to enjoy their golden years without financial stress, while also providing support for younger family members. However, if the distribution of savings is mishandled or perceived as unfair, it can severely strain family relationships. Disagreements over finances can escalate quickly, leading to feelings of resentment and betrayal. In the worst-case scenarios, these disputes can evolve into bitter court battles, tearing families apart and damaging bonds that have taken a lifetime to build. It's heartbreaking to think that something as fundamental as money can create such division among loved ones. The emotional fallout can be profound, with trust eroded and relationships fractured. To avoid these pitfalls, open communication is essential. Families need to engage in honest discussions about finances, expectations, and needs before they reach a crisis point. By fostering an environment where everyone feels heard and respected, families can navigate the complexities of financial planning together. This proactive approach not only helps preserve harmony, but also reinforces the values of gratitude, respect, and responsibility that are so vital for maintaining strong family ties. In essence, the presence of an elderly family member can be a blessing, but it requires careful consideration of how to integrate their needs and wishes into the broader family framework. By addressing financial matters with compassion and transparency, families can ensure that their relationships remain intact and that the love and support shared across generations continue to flourish. 2. Impact on the elderly's quality of life. For many elderly individuals, their savings represent not just financial security, but a chance to enjoy their later years to the fullest. After a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice, these savings are often intended to provide comfort, experiences, and opportunities for joy during retirement. However, how they choose to distribute these savings can significantly impact their quality of life. It's a challenging task for the elderly to navigate the complexities of property distribution fairly among their children or loved ones. Traditional views often dictate that certain dynamics, such as favoritism or expectations based on gender, can influence decisions. Yet, in today's world, elderly individuals must reevaluate these norms and strive for equality in how they manage their finances. By treating each child or family member with the same level of consideration, they can foster an environment that promotes unity and reduces potential conflicts. When elderly individuals embrace fairness in their financial decisions, it not only enhances their sense of peace, but also contributes to overall family harmony. This approach can lead to increased happiness, as family members feel valued and respected, creating a supportive atmosphere. Conversely, perceived inequities in financial matters can lead to feelings of resentment and division, which ultimately detract from the joy that should accompany this stage of life. Moreover, having a clear and equitable distribution plan allows elderly individuals to focus on enjoying their lives, rather than worrying about familial disputes or financial instability. It can free them to pursue interests, travel, or engage in hobbies they might have set aside while raising children or building careers. A secure financial foundation is essential for empowering the elderly to live their later years with dignity and fulfillment. 3. Impact on the elderly's medical care. In today's world, many elderly individuals benefit from retirement medical insurance, alleviating some of their worries about medical expenses. With high reimbursement rates, most can access the healthcare they need without facing crippling financial burdens. Additionally, many families have the means to afford medical treatment, which allows elderly parents to focus on their health rather than financial concerns. However, how elderly individuals distribute their savings can significantly influence their care during times of illness. In families with multiple children, a complex dynamic often emerges regarding who will inherit savings and who will take on the responsibility of caring for aging parents. This awareness can create an unspoken competition among siblings, leading to tension and feelings of resentment. If one child feels they are entitled to a larger share of the savings, they may expect to take on a lesser role in caregiving, believing that financial contribution absolves them of the emotional and physical duties of care. In reality, caring for elderly parents should be a shared responsibility among all siblings. Each child should recognize that providing care is not just about financial support, but also emotional presence and companionship. When elderly parents fall ill, they need more than just medical attention. They require the comfort of loved ones, the reassurance of family, and the warmth that comes from shared moments. Illness can be a profoundly lonely experience, and having family nearby can make a significant difference in their recovery and emotional well-being. To promote a culture of shared responsibility, families should engage in open discussions about caregiving expectations and financial matters. By fostering a sense of unity and collaboration, siblings can work together to ensure that their parents receive the care and attention they deserve. This collective approach not only strengthens familial bonds, but also enhances the quality of care provided to elderly parents. Ultimately, the distribution of savings and the approach to caregiving should align to create an environment where elderly individuals feel supported and cherished. By recognizing that caring for aging parents is a shared duty, families can navigate the complexities of medical care with compassion and understanding, ensuring that their loved ones are never alone during their most vulnerable moments. How can smart elderly people distribute their savings comfortably? 1. How should elderly people view their savings? If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 4 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Elderly individuals should approach their savings with a mindset of reasonable and just distribution. As society evolves, seniors need to adopt new perspectives on how to manage their finances. The traditional belief that children, particularly sons, are solely responsible for supporting their parents in old age is becoming outdated. With advancements in gender equality, daughters are increasingly stepping into roles that provide significant support to their families. In fact, in many cases, women's careers and statuses can surpass those of their male counterparts. This shift in dynamics means that relying on daughters for support in later years is not only valid but also a natural progression, especially in families with only one child. By acknowledging the potential contributions of daughters, elderly individuals can cultivate a more equitable approach to financial planning. This modern perspective empowers families to recognize that all children, regardless of gender, can play an integral role in their parents' well-being. When elderly individuals view their savings as a shared resource, they open the door to stronger family ties and collaborative support systems. 2. Elderly care should be based on the actual situation of the family. When it comes to elderly care, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Each family has its unique circumstances, and care plans should reflect those realities. Factors such as the number of children, their availability, financial situations, and the specific needs of the elderly person all play critical roles in determining how care is organized. In families where resources are limited or where siblings live far apart, it may be necessary to explore alternative care options, such as hiring professional caregivers or considering assisted living arrangements. Conversely, in families where children can provide hands-on support, The emphasis should be on collaboration and shared responsibilities. Open communication among family members is vital to ensure that everyone understands their role and can contribute according to their abilities. Ultimately, the goal of elderly care should be to enhance the quality of life for the elderly individual while fostering a sense of unity and cooperation within the family. By taking into account the actual situation of the family, elderly individuals can ensure that their care is both compassionate and practical, leading to a more fulfilling and dignified experience in their later years. 3. How smart elderly people ensure a happy old age. Many wise elderly individuals understand the importance of saving for retirement and view their savings not just as a financial cushion, but as a means to ensure a fulfilling and happy old age. By setting aside a retirement fund, they can earn interest on their savings while also preparing for future expenses. A smart approach to distributing this wealth is to consider the level of care each child provides, which can be outlined in a will. However, this strategy can be delicate. If parents withhold financial support during their children's times of need, it may come across as cold-hearted or uncaring. To strike a balance, many savvy elderly individuals choose to allocate their resources thoughtfully, often dividing their savings into two halves, one for their children and one for themselves. By giving half of their savings to their children, they provide support while also maintaining a financial safety net for their own needs. This approach ensures that parents remain a source of encouragement and support rather than becoming a financial crutch for their children. It's essential for children to strive for success and independence, and by retaining some funds for themselves, elderly individuals can enjoy life and pursue personal interest. This financial independence not only enhances their quality of life, but also helps to minimize potential conflicts with their children over money. Effective communication and understanding are vital in navigating family dynamics, especially when multiple children are involved. A balanced distribution of savings should reflect each child's contributions and the family's unique circumstances. While elderly individuals may have personal wishes regarding how they want to allocate their savings, fairness should always be the guiding principle. By prioritizing equity and open discussions, families can create an environment that fosters cooperation and mutual respect. Smart elderly individuals know that a fair approach to savings distribution not only secures their well-being but also strengthens family bonds, leading to a happier, more harmonious life in their golden years. As we wrap up this discussion on the impact of financial decisions and family dynamics in the lives of the elderly, we hope you've gained valuable insights into how to navigate these complex relationships. Remember, the way we approach our savings, the importance of fairness, and the need for open communication can significantly enhance the quality of life for everyone involved. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What is one key takeaway you've learned today that you plan to bring into your own life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below this video. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave your comment, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content that inspires and informs. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.